Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Lawyer Forward podcast. I'm Mike Whalen. We are having a special series that I mentioned before. We are talking about the release of our new ebook, Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot, a Pragmatist Guide to Legaltech Marketing. I am here talking to smart friends for this series. And by the way, you can go to lawyersdon'tcare.com, which was a domain that was available, which is awesome, and get your free copy of the ebook. Meantime, to drive this, I'm going to be talking to smart friends about what it is to market to lawyers today. Right now, I have my friend, my former coworker, my sometimes collaborator, Chris Handy, with us today. Chris, how are you, sir?
Mike, I'm feeling swell. I'm feeling, I would label myself more as curious than smart. I like to go and learn about things and go deep on them, and excited to do that here with you today as well.
He's dumb and humble is what we actually want to tell people at home. Chris, you are, okay, so for the people at home who don't know, you and I work together at Law Insider. So we both have been selling to lawyers, literally. We were out there speaking to lawyers, trying to connect them. But you also have a background in marketing that expands beyond just the legal context. Before we get going on sort of what's happening today in the marketing industry, what's changed, what it means for companies who want to speak to lawyers, particularly technology companies. Tell us briefly about you. What's your unique perspective that you're bringing to this conversation?
I started early on in my career I was actually working with those eBay stores. If you remember, you would be able to walk in with your Beanie Baby. This is the very stereotypical example. You walk in with your Beanie Babies and say, hey, I would like to sell these on eBay. And there would be someone behind the counter that would say, okay, I'll help you with that because you don't know how to do it. And obviously the world has changed much since then. I was working at a business like that, and I ended up getting recruited from the sort of big business like that. And I got recruited to a company called Easy Sale. It was a bunch of former Radio Shack executives that were building a network of these stores and trucks and a distribution center. And a couple of months later, I'm running a distribution center, a series of trucks that are going out to people's houses and picking things up and bringing them back. And we would list them and sell them on eBay for a percentage of the profit or percentage of the sale. And so I got to learn so much, not only about technology, but about how people understand technology. And then also it was like the best copywriting and business school I've ever been to, because we were listing and selling, and I was managing a team of people who were listing and selling hundreds and sometimes thousands of products a day, which was so much fun. I got to be involved in and write hundreds of headlines before we had ChatGPT, so as to get more clicks on our version of the old Discman that you're selling on eBay than the other person who is selling the exact same thing. And that sort of boot camp for copywriting was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I got to learn so much about words that people grab onto and what is important to show and what is important to engender trust. And we'll get into all of that. We started a company called e-recycling. And at that time, when you would go buy a new cell phone, there was no thought of what you would do with your old one. It would go in the drawer. So we put a cardboard box behind every counter for Sprint stores here in the US. And we funneled all of those into one place. I got to learn building a sales team to sell all these things. I got to learn e-commerce, like real e-commerce, not on eBay. I got to build those organizations, build go-to-market teams, international sales. I got to figure out, how do we use LinkedIn to go and find people in Hong Kong that want to buy a spreadsheet full of phones. So much fun. After that, there was an exit with that company. I started a consultancy, and initially I just did a website for, I think, my father-in-law's church, just to get something up there, and then started working with businesses that needed more help with really kind of emerging technologies. And it's been a big theme for me. Marketing automation, CRM at that time, people were just figuring out that they needed to have that stuff. We would help people implement those systems, like HubSpot, became a HubSpot partner, then realized that, hey, we could put all these systems in place, Mike, but we can't close the deal for them. And even if we could, sometimes the products aren't exactly what the people are asking for. So I've gone in-house with several companies, in most cases, building out conversational chatbot style interfaces since about 2018, working with go-to-market style chatbots, working with an open source chatbot creator that now is infused with all sorts of LLM technologies like you're discussing in your ebook, and kind of most recently in the legal field and with a couple of companies, and one of those being Law Insider, and helping build AI products there. So I've seen a lot of these different phases of people adopting new technologies, and we find ourselves in a very interesting place today. So I'm excited to dig into the conversation with you.
Yeah, by the way, my mom had a pile of Beanie Babies as an investment opportunity in the 90s. And speaking of my parents' bad decisions, my dad, when I was young, this is setting up context that I promise is relevant. My dad, when I was young, worked for the Yellow Pages. He was selling ad space in Yellow Pages. And then when direct mail came around, he went and worked in direct mail. And it was super cool because the Yellow Pages, you didn't know what was working. It was all, the way Scott Galloway puts it, is you could make a mediocre product and then you buy the Yellow Pages and
No
you pay.
analytics in the Yellow Pages.
Yeah, you have cheap TV ads, you have cheap radio, you have cheap benches on whatever. And so then when he went to direct mail, there was this promise of attribution that you would know, you put a coupon code on there, you hope people would show up for it. And then you got into Google, and Google, the attribution gods just, pleased themselves with their grandeur. And they were able to tell you everything that everybody was doing. And you saw this trend. And this is where I want to get back to, because in some ways, this has totally shifted. In some ways, old is new again. I want to get your take on that. But it got to the point where we were making decisions as marketers based on what was attributable. So you start to get this weird feedback loop of, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but I know I can count it. And so we started to change our behaviors a lot to lean toward this attribution. And now we live in a world where Google search is up, but clicks through to websites is way down. Searches on Google, this will shock people, are up 50% over the last year, but actual clicks through to websites are down 30% because they're getting the answer already. So my question to you, are we back to the Yellow Pages and benches days? Are we back to we don't know what's working? Are we back to we can have a mediocre product combined with brand? Is this the end of brand? Where are we at this moment relative to where we've been? What do you think is new about marketing today?
I would want to break it down into a couple of different steps, but I think big picture, brand has never been more important. I saw a post from the CEO of Replit, which is it is a platform for people to go on and describe an app they want to build, and then this sort of technology just like builds the app, right? And it gets you decent results. It's not something that you might be able to in one shot go off and sell and build a huge business off of, but it's a starting point. And I saw that they had grown this year 400%, like just in an insane vertical leap on your line chart. The fact that building new products has never been easier creates an unbelievable opportunity for folks, but it also removes the gatekeeping that came with the need for deep technical know-how in a lot of cases. So that combined with some of the things you're just mainly, people are going to LLMs, or even Google is now presenting an AI result above or instead of the 10 blue links or the 5 blue links plus 10 paid links, whatever it is, that they used to deliver. Those two things have made it so that any given technology is almost a commodity. And that's not something that's new necessarily. It's been that way. I worked with a company called Drift in the late 2010s, and they were in a very crowded market. Intercom had a chatbot. There were all sorts of other options for this sort of thing, but it was the positioning and branding that really led them to stand out for a specific audience. And they went hard on thought leadership and those sorts of things. And that's what drove the initial following. And then you find your customers and then you start to build just for them, and you can start to build a unique story. But it would not have been successful if it was just based on the technology alone. It was about the story that was being created and the word of mouth, which is the real only way now that you can get in front of people without just going super hard on paid ads, which is a spigot that once you turn it off, it's tough to keep things going unless you've been building a word of mouth machine the whole time.
So as I think about that, a lot of the logic for what one might call content marketing, and I've talked to Joe Polizzi and the people who invented these terms, and I don't think they would describe content marketing this way. But in the age of attribution, a lot of what we call content marketing now, the justification, the ROI, was somebody's going to search for something adjacent to us. We can answer that question, and that's going to move people over into our ecosystem. But you have now, I was watching CNBC this morning, and the CEO of Cloudflare was there, and he was pointing out that 10 years ago, Google would scrape 2 pages for one visitor, meaning they'd go and they'd pull from 2 companies who answered a question that was adjacent to this person's problem. And out of 2, one of them would get a visit. And then 6 months ago, it was 6 pages. And now it's 15 pages. And if you look at, 15 scrapes per page visit. Now, if you're looking at ChatGPT, 6 months ago, it was 250 scrapes. They would go look at 250 companies trying to answer the adjacent question for one person to land on a website. Now it's 1,500 companies that they're visiting their website and getting the answer for one visitor to one of those 1,500 companies. Is there logic now to doing content marketing, or were we thinking about it wrong when we were making the ROI pitch before?
I think the content marketing that you're describing is very much in line with a friend of mine, Marcus Sheridan. You probably have met him in the content marketing world circles. He was the leader of a fiberglass pool company. And I've attended several workshops with Marcus, and he's given me some great advice. There was a period of time where he was about to lose his business and was able to create blog posts like, can a fiberglass pool last longer than a regular concrete in-ground pool, right? And he would get that traffic from Google, and then he could drive people to his website. And despite being regional, he would get enough people in his regional area that would say, okay, well, now I'm here. There's this whole ebook that I could download based on that. And now I can learn all about fiberglass pools and look at the pros and cons. And he made a business about being very transparent about all of the questions that his sales team would get and that he would get, and about pricing and those kinds of things. So if I want to know how much something costs, it might end up on his website. Now, he not only did he build a huge business that way in the mid 2010s, early 2010s, he's also said he could never do that now the same way, because all those things that people were going there for are things that people are going, whether they intend to initially or not, they're going to AI and they're getting AI answers for. Either they're typing it into Google and Google is saying, here's everything you need to know about fiberglass pools that we've stolen from other people's websites. And I'll straight up say basically they're taking the content that people are creating and putting on their websites, and they're just presenting it. You can find the sources sometimes, but not all of them. And a lot of people are just going straight to ChatGPT for those kinds of answers. So if you are leading with sort of FAQ, fact-based content marketing and expecting that to work like it did then, got problems. You've got problems. Now, that is not to say that those answers are not just as important today to be on your website as they were then. It's just the reason people find themselves on your site is different, right? That's coming from a direct referral. That's coming from a word of mouth. That's coming from maybe a more targeted Google search. So it's certainly something to really think about and figure out how you can provide the same level of detail for people who are already on your site versus treating it as a first touch discovery for them.
Well, but I think about Marcus Sheridan, and he got to the point, if I'm not mistaken, that he was getting traffic from all over the world. And so he started to sell essentially fiberglass pools, like the actual materials he I think created.
Oh, yeah. He started a whole manufacturing business, and they would ship them all. He grew their business considerably based on that because they had this worldwide demand.
Right. And so I wonder now if, like, I heard an interview with the godfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, and he said, he was asked, what would you tell your kid today if they were early in their career, what to do for a career? And he said, I would tell them to be plumbers. They should train to be plumbers. It's this leaning on this hyper local, very emotional labor business. You keep hearing we're going to have so many nursing homes. We need more people. And emotional labor doesn't pay very well. And these technology companies in particular were able to achieve scale. Do you think in this age of communication that are we shifting back to Marcus's original business where he was hyper local and let me build up this lower expense, but also lower scale? Or do you think in this age where everything's referral based and brand and we're pulling people in different ways, can you still achieve scale?
Well, of course you can achieve scale. It's just one has to think about how this technology might be used in a year, 2 years, these kinds of things. A lot of people would never hire a content marketing agency or something like that today when they might have 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, because they believe that they can type a few sentences into ChatGPT and get the same output. Now, the people who think that today may very well be getting the same level of quality that they were when they were going out and hiring somebody or hiring someone off of a freelance marketplace or something like that.
I mean, not obviously my outputs were way better than.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that there's a volume and then there is impact, right? And I think when you look at a lot of these different companies, and this goes back to my earlier experiences with competing chatbot platforms, it's like, oh, what is the positioning? What is the problem you're solving? At Driftwood would get this question like, well, how are you and Intercom different? I mean, I've seen them, I've seen you. The answer that we continually gave the sales team was, hey, Intercom's great. They're doing a great job, right? They started from a customer success DNA, customer service. And if you're in the business of closing customer tickets and giving people quick results on asking questions and getting support, customer support, man, hard to do better than that. But if what you want is to convert the people who are already on your website into sales leads and to give them instant answers based on what they want and to book meetings and drive revenue, to drive pipeline for your sales team, that's our DNA. And we're always going to build that. They're always going to build this. We're always going to build that. And so while it may have started from a similar point, it's about naming and claiming that sort of space. And a lot of times it starts with kind of highlighting the problems that you're out there to solve, and we can get more into that. But I think to answer your question, it's more about how you place yourself in the market, about how you show up personally. And I think now more than it was then, the person behind the business is kind of leading from the front, and it matters what their point of view is. It matters what their worldview is. There's so much politics and all that in the world dividing everyone. And maybe that's something that needs to be brought up. I mean, I certainly have made decisions in my own purchasing behavior and changed my mind based on a person's personal politics. These are all things that matter to me. And I'm not representative of every buyer, but I try and think about how I buy and apply that to how other folks do. But if you're not showing up with a point of view, then you might as well just be another sentence in a ChatGPT output.
Yeah, and I think that's to overlap with what I wanted to talk to you about. There's this concept of the zero-click kind of marketing style. This is Rand Fishkin and Amanda Natividad who are making this popular. But I think to the point that you're making, if you consider everybody's in this highly distracted stream, if it takes 1,500 pages of information to get to one referral to a piece of information, if we're all distracted and we're scrolling through, the idea that whatever it is that you do, whatever your communication is, whatever your argument is, that you're going to interrupt that stream with something bland just makes no sense. And so to a degree, we're at a point now where we have to be able to take a stand and be interesting enough to interrupt. And that's so much harder than just paid interruption, paid placement. We conceptually have to break someone's stream. And if you've got little kids, you know how hard that can be to break their stream sometimes. What tactically now, I'm thinking about, to your point earlier about speaking to the problem, talking to the problem. It is significant to me, I think, that anytime you open a thriller novel, there's a dead body, right? You're always starting with a dead body. It shocks you out of whatever it is that you're doing because there's something weird about the dead body, and it makes you slow down and it pulls you to the next page, right? It's this thriller style which, as you know, is also a copywriting style. You're using this paragraph to get them to read the next paragraph and this chapter to get them to read the next chapter. When you think tactically about, I'm trying to pull them out of their stream and into something that I can solve for them, what's the dead body? How do you speak to people about a problem in a way that breaks their stream?
I think the way you framed that was really interesting because I often I'll write a piece or write something, and then I end up somehow taking the last sentence and putting it first, or like putting it at the beginning, and it makes it 3 times as good. But the way I think about copywriting, and that's really all this stuff is communicating with the written word, or you could translate this to a video script or whatever it is that you'd like. If you spend any length of time on TikTok or Reels or something like that, that hook needs to happen in like less than a second. Mm-hmm. And then you can come back and explain it. But all those elements that you just described are there. But I like to use the analogy of email. Think about email. You have an inbox, right? Let's say you have most people have a Gmail or something like that. Open it up. Now, I've got my tabs, things are separated. So I've got my primary set of messages that I can look through. Now that likely every one of those is going to get a scan. I'm going to be able to say, okay, I see that this email came in. Now my promotions tab, sometimes I might click on those, but most of the time I don't, right? I might scan those. So even email marketers have trouble reaching that primary inbox. But let's say you make it into that primary inbox. How are you going to get somebody to even look at your message? Well, the way the human eye works is we're scanning on the left-hand side, who's the sender, right? That's first. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that. And so they'll go out there and they'll share something on the LinkedIn company page or the company account, or even send an email from company. And it's like, man, we're not here paying attention to company unless we're just highly invested in that particular company. Now, if it's Mike, if it's Chris, and I see your email come across my inbox or vice versa, we're likely going to give that a second look. And so that's the first criteria. Now, if you think about it visually, you're going to see the subject line, and you're going to see a little set of text underneath that that's sort of a preview of what the email message contains, or, and a lot of people don't know this, has been set by the sender, right? You can sometimes customize what that little preview text is down below. So if you think about that, sender name, then subject line, then the little preview text, that's all before I've even opened it up. Yeah. So I have those three signals. If I can get someone to look at my name and say, I want to hear from him, then they'll scan their eye from left to right, read the subject line. If the subject line is relevant enough, then they'll read the preview text. But if you want people to really read something through, then getting them through each stage is so important. So I would say the personal, the human aspect of any of this information is more important now than it ever has been. And especially as we approach a time where you can't trust what you see in video, what you see in images, like to really have someone behind it that I trust or that I could build a relationship with over time has never been more important. And this will continue to get more important.
Yeah, such an interesting thing. That CEO of Cloudflare I was talking about on CNBC, when he was asked, okay, well, what should people be talking about? He said the most personal, hardest to get stuff. He brought up the example of skiing. He's like, I want to know what the skiing is like on the west side of the mountain versus the east side of the mountain today, based on who went to, and that's just impossible to know from ChatGPT. You need that highly personal stuff. But it reminds me of, and this is the last thing I want to talk about, I talk about this a lot because I'd like to set back and see what is the social structure that makes adoption of innovation happen. And this is, if you've got a legal tech company or even just an idea, even just a new drink you want people to try, as far as the people you're trying to sell to, this is an innovation. And so how innovation spread is really relevant to how you speak to the market. And I feel like you identified two types of people that I think are really relevant here. There's the person who has a need, a problem. They see the dead body. They want to be pulled out of their stream. They want to know what they should buy, what they should do, right? That is your major market. And I think what a lot of legal tech companies will do is not get to that main market because they only satisfy the other group of people that you identified, I think, which is sort of the referrers, the trusted person, the person who will use their social capital. They'll risk it to tell their friends, hey, you should try this thing. When you think about the kind of content that needs to be created, and we've addressed, I think, the people who have a problem to solve, it's the main market. Let's put it in front of them in good copywriting, make it easier for them to access. For the other people, for the missionaries, for the believers, for the teachers, do you think there's a place for thought leadership content, or maybe that's not the way to phrase it anymore? How do you think about getting to the referrers, the trusted people, if that makes sense?
How do you reach the people who are likely to spread through word of mouth? Part of that is speaking to customers and really spending time understanding their workflows. And I think that the number one thing that people can work on now is, even, let's say I've got 0 customers, and I was just speaking with a company yesterday. They're an AI company, computer vision. You can have something like that and have 0 customers yet. If you can build something that is easy to use, or that you can at least implement with a customer, let's get it in their hands and then get a case study out of it. Because it's that proof aspect that people need They have got to have the proof. And I categorize proof in a number of ways. One, what are sort of the value drivers that your product is going to solve for? Because that needs to show up in every case study. That needs to show up in every product feature page that you've got on your website. How does this solve for helping you move faster, helping you scale faster? And I'm talking about really deep fundamental things, helping you save money. These are those deep fundamental things, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for the business user, for the business customer. I need to, one, not get something in there that's going to make me look like an idiot, right? It's got to pass that test. Two, is this going to help me do my job better or help my team do my job better or faster? Or can I even save money? Or if I'm not saving money up front, what's my payback period? How long do I have to wait until I achieve the efficiencies necessary to make that investment worth it? Those are the things that you can do with an early set of customers and have that proof on your site. So they have to trust you. And the trust and belief, those two things that are very sort of existential, if they're not there, you're done. You're cooked. So
yeah, the way I put it in the ebook is that the missionaries, the believers, they want a sermon, but the congregation, they want testimony. They want somebody to show them that it's worth using and it's worth doing. So I appreciate that perspective. And I think that a lot of the things that we're talking about, there are echoes of it in this ebook. I hope that what the people who are watching this will do is go over to lawyersdon'tcare.com and download their copy of Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot. It's a free ebook that gives you more to talk about than Chris and I have discussed here in terms of how marketing works today, what's shifted, and what you can do operationally to go get those results. Chris, for people who want to learn more from you, more about what you do, and maybe hire you and give you all the money in the world to go settle lawyers, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I was able to secure the domain chrishandy.com so a couple of years ago. So you can go there and find everything. And I'd love to connect with anyone who's listening.
Awesome. I'll make sure that stuff is in the show notes to the episode. For the rest of you watching, listening, learning, we'll see you on the next in this series of special episodes for the Lawyers Don't Care About Your Chatbot ebook. And we will get back to regularly scheduled program in just a couple of weeks here. Thank you, Chris. Thank you all. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Mike.